Sloppy Spoilers with your host, DT2. What's up, y'all? DT2 Comics Chat here. Welcome to another episode of Sloppy Spoilers. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Alien Resurrection. Alien Resurrection is the fourth entry in the Alien series, and we've got a lot to say because this is another movie where it's almost like a love it or hate it kind of thing. But let me bring in my co-host, and we're going to dive right in. Welcome to the show, David Nemesis Howard. What's up, Nemesis?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I guess I'm looking forward to talking to all of you. I was not looking forward to seeing this movie again, so let's see how this goes.
Let's say welcome to Steve, Shade Wing Sellers. What's up, Steve?
Oh, not too bad. I have found serenity, and it's in this movie. Unfortunately, far from a resurrection, this is the movie that nearly killed the Alien franchise, but that makes it particularly fun to talk about.
Wow, I found serenity is in this movie. Welcome to Jeff, Dr. Fate Bracey. What's up, Bracey?
Welcome to space, where no one can hear you meme.
So we're going to talk about Alien Resurrection. We're going to start off like we normally do. We're going to give general impressions. I'll tell you mine. That being, this movie is a string of ideas that probably work better on paper because little to none of them work well in execution, but it also makes me feel like they weren't that good on paper to begin with. Okay, this movie is an example. This is another example. Remember, you've heard me talk about when we say studio interference, when we talk about when the studio is kind of meddling with it, and they've jettisoned all ideas of a good story. And they say, well, we need this scene and we need to see this and we need to see that. But this movie fails at the premise. And we're going to dissect that. The basic concept that they use to structure the movie around, it fails at the premise line. It's a complete fail. Once you fail at the premise line, there's no amount of smoke and mirrors and CGI and editing and anything that's going to make it better. Okay, it's not going to happen. If you put a pound of ground beef in your lemon cake, no amount of bacon is going to make that cake taste good. You're going to come out with cake with a hamburger in the middle. Okay, and so this movie fails from the jump. From the jump, it fails, and I'll tell you why. Then I'll throw it out to my co-host for overall initial thoughts. The reason this movie fails from the premise is because they fundamentally fail to understand that the nature of the Alien franchise is the story world that they set up is broad enough for many different adventures. They concluded Ripley's story, and they should have left it where it was. Now, if you watched our review of Alien 3, we didn't like that either, but it was the end of Ripley's story. It wasn't the end that we wanted, but it was a definitive end. They should have left that alone, okay? If they wanted to use other ideas in this movie, they could have done it, but the whole idea of bringing Sigourney back as Ripley or clone Ripley or Ripley number 8 fail. Nothing about that is a viable story concept. Not one thing, and as we discuss it, I'll show you why. It failed from the jump. There's no way you can win when you fail from the premise, okay? The story world is built. It's built to let other characters fight the aliens. That's the fun of the xenomorphs. But when you make it be about Ripley, fail, okay? All right, so let's hear initial thoughts. Start with Nemesis.
Yeah, in our last episode where we talked about Alien 3, we said if Alien 3 is a desecration, I said that this movie was an abomination.
Yes.
And I absolutely believe that after having watched this movie for the second time in my life. Lord help me. Yeah, it was an abomination for exactly the reasons you're talking about. I'll just say almost none of the movie science or movie logic in this movie has any basis in fact on the preceding 3 movies that came before it, except for the chest burster part and there's a queen. And even that is they play around real fast and loose with, you know, and they try and cover it up by saying, oh, we did it 300 or 200 years in the future or whatever. No, just no. Because certain things, if you're going to take some of the leaps that I'm sure we're going to talk about, then you need to explain them on screen. Because this movie, even more so than the last one, really relied on fans of the franchise to start making up their own theories about how things work and everything else, which, as we talked about before, is just not a good sign. It's not a good sign when you're going in with that as the premise. So
That's right. That's right. Go ahead, Steve. Initial thoughts.
This movie is incredibly dumb. I can't sugarcoat that. This movie makes absolutely no sense from the jump. From how in the world they cloned her after the last movie, where she was completely atomized. What did they take to clone her, especially after 200 years? You're telling me that cell samples from her blood survived 200 years after she atomized herself in a furnace? No, and that is the beginning. Everything else just continues to get more and more ridiculous and nonsensical from there. I will say it's more fun. I didn't feel like I wanted to slit my wrists like I did with Alien 3. I mean, it's something where I could sit through it at the very least, without having to step away from it because of pure abject misery. I'll give it that over Alien 3. But on the other hand, everything is completely dumb. I mean, it completely disrespects the lore, as what it said. And the few ideas that do make sense work better on another show that Joss Whedon created, most notably Firefly. Basically, Firefly is this movie transplanted and with everything better. And everything else is just complete nonsense and ridiculous. And yeah, it almost killed the franchise, and for good reason.
That's right. Remember at the end of Batman and Robin, we had to wait from 97 to 2005 to see Batman Begins. That's how badly Batman and Robin stunk up the screen. Same thing. Go ahead, Bracey.
In defense of the movie, I will say that the samples likely came from when she was in the infirmary. They're not digging her out of molten lead. But even then, you can only stretch those cells so far.
Over 200 years.
300 years of cloning. So I'm trying to be charitable. Because there's a lot of ideas in this movie that I do like. Unfortunately, they're all just poorly executed. I appreciate the fact that they tried to do a lot of new things and go in a different direction, bring new things to the table. I think that's what brought Sigourney Weaver back in. She wasn't just playing the same character. So we've got a really cool new way for you to play an extension of that character. And I can definitely see the appeal and the possibilities in that. But it just this film is like I remember watching it and thinking like this is like a comic book from like the 60s where like stuff didn't have to make sense. It just kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now keying in off of that, Sigourney Weaver is one of my favorite actresses, so I don't want to disparage her in any way, but she was an exec producer and she did have some say over the story. And the whole idea of her making love to the alien, the whole idea of there being sexual tension between them was her idea. And I was like, So so we're gonna start at the root of what we just talked about because that's key. So first of all, I'm not familiar enough with DNA technology to speak authoritatively, but if you freeze it, how long is it viable? The reason I say that is because what about frozen eggs? What about when a woman gets her eggs frozen? How long is that going to last? If it was still viable, if it was viable tech at all, we'd have perfected cryogenics, and we don't. So you can't convince me that over a 200 to 300 year period, some type of DNA samples, unless you try to do a Jurassic Park thing and you get something frozen in amber. There was no amber in this, one. Number two, even if you go to samples in the infirmary and you scrub that whole place down to get that kind of thing, then let's review this idea. A pregnant woman that dies is not merged with the baby if you bring her back. That was the whole idea here.
Yeah, the chest burster still being in there when they cloned her made no sense to me.
Makes no sense. Makes no sense. It makes no sense because they have to be implanted. And even if you brought her back, you would not bring it back. And even if you brought it back, it would not be merged with her.
And give her acid blood and all the others. Like, it altered her DNA. It was like, what, excuse me?
So what we got was a Spider-Man situation. When Peter Parker got bitten by a radioactive spider, he got all the cool parts about being a human spider except spinning his own webs. That's another conversation. So in other words, as his DNA changed, he just took the cool parts. So he got super strength, he got super speed, he got spider sense, he got the sticky hands and the sticky feet. That's kind of what they did here. What'd you say, Bracy?
And he didn't go around eating people.
Right, didn't go around eating people. So that's kind of the idea here, that somehow we could get a merger of the two until we get something that's not quite or whatever. So from an actor's point of view, I can completely understand wanting to play something different because most of them do. Especially if you built, if your signature character is something you've been doing for like 20 years now. I can understand that. But from a narrative point of view, nothing about clone Ripley from the jump. And then on top of all that, I thought it was funny that as they watched her grow, she grew like this. So she grew very conveniently, I know I'm naked, so I'm going to grow in I know I'm naked pose. I always thought that was really funny. But anyway, and then if they wanted to add insult to injury, they start off with a quote from Newt. My mommy told me there weren't any real monsters, not real ones, but there are. I'm like, so y'all want to remind us what y'all did to me? That's not the smartest. Oh, I'm telling you, it fails from the premise line. And then when you add all that up, on top of that, you can't have enough science and enough technology and enough foreknowledge of the aliens to have them bring Ripley back, but extract the baby queen, but not have technology in place to contain an alien outbreak, because the whole rest of the movie is them failing to contain what happened. I'm like, how you gonna have 200 years to study a phenomenon and it don't occur to you to put acid-proof anything anywhere? It don't occur to you to put them in a cage. In a cage, it's just like shark movies. That's why shark movies don't scare me, because they're so stupid. They just make me laugh because they so like Deep Blue Sea. You're gonna go out in the shark's environment and you're gonna give it super intelligence and make it super strong, and you ain't got nowhere to go because you're surrounded by 14 million tons of water. What could go wrong? How did this happen? See, no.
That's right. In the middle of Arizona.
Okay, right. You wouldn't put a shark tank in a desert like somebody with some sense. So if the shark get out, they'll be floundering. No. You want to be in the water. Okay. How you going to create a situation with a creature that multiplies? You're trying to get it to multiply. You want it to multiply. And the idea of containing an outbreak does not occur to you one time. So you can see from the jump, I'm out of this movie. So I just, experienced it, but I wasn't in it because it's too dumb. So I know we talked about it, but if you have any additional thoughts, let me hear your additional thoughts or just the premise. Because I love what Steve said, about the DNA thing. And I love what Jeff said if they went to the infirmary. But, it's a stretch. What did you get? Like, a piece of skin from your shoulder? Yeah. Well, let me hear what you think about that. Start with Bracy.
Okay, I imagine that when they brought her on board from the pod, they would have, done some blood tests, done a whole makeup. And this is, again, me being charitable, because just like we talked about last time, I'm having to do the work of the movie.
Yes.
The movie could be able to explain this to me, if not showing me at least in some exposition and more than a throwaway line. I'm having to think about, how do we preserve something? Well, we know Ripley herself, her entire body was preserved for 57 years in the hypersleep. So they arguably do have that technology, but you've always got to assume, just like I always would say in my my comic book reviews for something new or part of a series, You always have to assume this is somebody's first time reading this. You have to assume this is somebody's first time watching the Alien franchise. You need to establish the world and its rules, let people know what's going on so they can jump in fast. But if you just leave it out in the open, then we just kind of have to make up our own story, and we can easily come to the wrong conclusions if you don't give us those guideposts to follow. And that's why a lot of this movie fails.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Nemesis.
Yeah, I was going to say, this movie, I mean, this may sound really nerdy, but it failed right off the bat science-wise for me when they said that they had cloned this Ripley, who now has all the like we were talking about, the good parts of the alien. She's got alien blood. She's Michael Jordan now. All the other stuff going on. And
clone from a positron.
Yeah, and so right there, it just failed, and then I was never into it at all at that point, because to me, the whole premise of the film that Ripley is here and what's going to happen with her, to me, it just didn't make any sense at all. And it's like, if you were going to establish that, you needed to show me that to be last movie, or you need to do a retcon in this movie and show me a scene we didn't see for the last movie, establish that something, And so that was there. And then, you hit really well on the other thing that really stands out. There's two other things just for the premise. The other one was the prison. It's like, if anyone has ever been to a prison, if everyone has ever been to a fort, military installation, so trying to get in instead of getting out, you always have defense and depth. You have layer after layer. So even if you break through the first layer, then you're inside the wall, that wall, and another wall. And usually there's another wall past that. That's why it's so hard to get out of those places. It's like here, it's like, boom, now I'm in the ventilation system. Woo, I'm going crazy and running around. It's like, and not only that, they talked about how thin the walls of the ship were, and if you shot off a gun and go through the ship, well, this acid's going through. So right there, I'm sitting there. How many decks did it eat through on the Nostromo? But it conveniently stopped right in the ventilation shaft here. So I'm like, oh, come on. And then the last thing I'm just going to say, goes back just a minute, but I just want to say it, just like we've talked as writers that sometimes not sometimes, we do need editors to look at our stuff and make it better and tell us when we're doing things, we may love it, but we may be the only ones that love it. Well, artists and and actors and things, they need that sometimes too. And Sigourney Weaver's whole thing, making love of the alien, that's when she needed a producer or director to look at her and be like, we love you, Sigourney. We really do, but you need to make love to the alien on your own time. So,
there was a viable movie here about combining human and alien DNA to try to make something new.
Right.
There's a viable movie there. That idea can fly. But bringing Ripley back, and like we've been saying, the way no. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, everything about this doesn't make any sense. The thing is, and I'm going to say the plain unvarnished truth: this character is not Ellen Ripley. She is a clone or a construct or something, but she is not Ellen Ripley. She looks like Ellen Ripley. She's played by Sigourney Weaver, so they want us to think it's Ripley, but it's not Ripley. And in addition to this, the thing that I just thought, like, no, this took me out of the movie, I don't buy this, is the reason they give for her having memories of having been Ripley. It's some ancestral memory. Oh, BS. No, I don't buy that. I absolutely do not buy that. No, if they had said something like, okay, we made a brain tape of her, when she was, knocked out on, the Fiorina or whatever it was called, that place, I could have bought that if they had found a good reason for it. But there's no way that she would have memories of being Ripley of that, and especially not in that kind of contrived way. They're trying to come up with an explanation for not only is Sigourney Ripley, but having remembered being Ripley, and it's just no. This is a completely different character. In addition to that, she doesn't even act like Ripley. She definitely has traits where she acts like the alien. Okay, I can buy a little bit of that if what they're trying to do is create a hybrid. That would have actually have made sense, and that was what I was hoping that they were trying to say early on, was that they were trying to create this genetic construct, where they were trying to create a super being, who had alien powers. Okay, that's something that I could see Weyland-Yutani trying to create. Okay, and I can see them using Ripley's DNA for that. I don't have a problem if they could get it. That's fine. But the problem is that that's not what they're doing. It was more like, okay, we cloned Ripley and we cloned the alien, and she just happened to survive, being chest bursted for some reason, and she has the memories of being Ripley for some reason that, is plot contrived. No, that's nonsense. Absolutely stupid. And I will go also one step further on what DT was saying about things not making sense as far as containing the outbreak. It is so astronomically stupid that they create a threat to the planet Earth with this, because not only did they fail to contain it, thinking that, okay, we'll make alien-proof glass, but we're not going to make alien-proof floors or decks. No, that's stupid. And in addition to that, we find out later that, the emergency protocols are to take the ship to the nearest base. Where is the nearest base? The planet Earth, which happens to conveniently be 3 hours away. So where were they? Near Mars? What is this? Why, if you have the ability to take this alien and to study this thing, why not put it somewhere where it can't get to Earth in case there's an outbreak? What are you doing? Everything about this is like, it's cartoonishly dumb for the sake of, we want the alien to get out and cause an outbreak and cause a threat to the Earth, because we want to ramp up tension. But none of the story logic adds up in any way whatsoever. So yeah, it's completely nonsensical from the start.
This is weird. I didn't think I'd be the one defending this movie, but it seems to be what's happening here, because I never took this Ripley as being Ripley. I bought into her being a new thing, and if you accept the premise that her and the alien have become a mishmash creature, I even accepted the genetic memories, because I figured that's just an attribute of the alien, because like she can do things like she can tell a ship's moving through space, even though you shouldn't be able to do that as a human being on a spaceship. So weirdly, I found in a position.
But I'm gonna let Nemesis jump in after that. But consider this: I said it on Twitter about WandaVision. You can't use Evan Peters and then get mad at your audience for making assumptions.
True.
Okay, you brought in the Fox X-Men universe when you use that actor, even if he's not actually Quicksilver. If you just wanted a fake Quicksilver, a fake Pietro, as Agnes said, you could have used anybody, but you brought him in. Mm-hmm. So people are going to react to that, and you don't get to scream, why are they reacting to that? You can't have Sigourney Weaver and then say, why are people thinking this should be Ripley? Or the Ripley said, you can't have both of them. You can't use a quote from Newt and you can't use Sigourney and think you're not going to bring all the baggage that comes with that. See what I mean? So the movie you're talking about works without Sigourney. If we're doing human alien hybrid experiments and it's somebody we're just meeting and then we can invest in them in that would make more sense than Ripley. See what I mean? Which is what
species ended up being.
Because you can't emotionally and mentally divorce yourself from everything that comes along with Ripley. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Nemesis. You had something to say?
Yeah, as far as purpose goes, the only thing I wanted to add is that the other thing about this movie that really took me out, and this kind of ties in the premise, and I'll say how in a minute, is that this is the second movie in a row where they had an arguably deeper and better cast with more, kudos to, or not kudos, but, more acting chops to them than the first two movies, at the time. And yet they stunk it up. I mean, it was really bad, but some of the actors in here are incredible and went and did incredible things before and after. And I say that to say that the other premise I had that I really have a problem with in this movie, and I forgot about till I watched it again, and I promise I'm not going to rant into the Tweety Bird and the not summer soldier, but once again, the biggest doofus in this film, the one person that is miscast in this film because he is not a general officer or a military person, is the general in charge of the ship. He's a doofus. And I'm just,
He
you know,
I know him from Joe versus the Volcano,
Yeah.
and I didn't see him as a general either. I saw him
Yeah.
as Mr. Waturi,
or the dad at night in the Roxbury, you know.
Yeah.
And so, so anyway, I say that because, and these poor guys know it. I've been on a rant about the way military people are treated or represented a lot of times in films, and it's either Rambo or Dumbo. You know, it's one of the two. You know, there's never any middle ground. You're either a Rambo, super soldier, out of control killer, or you're the Dumbo. You know, so. But anyway, that's how it kind of ties in. So once again, this is another movie, another TV show with that premise, where because we want the military to be the antagonist this time, they got to come off as gung-ho Dumbo, who can't do anything right. He's got his head so far up his rear end, but he's happy because his shoes are shined. You know, it's like, come on.
Okay, then that's a perfect transition into where I'm going next. So I'll throw this out, and then we're going to go to the cast. The other thing I want to throw out to extend our analysis of the premise is this. It wasn't Weyland-Yutani, fake Ripley, brought up the company, and they said, oh, we're not them, you know, we're scientists, we're military, or whatever we are. So once again, you have nerfed your best shadow villain. Weyland-Yutani is the shadow villain of this franchise. And once again, you know, you had wide open opportunities to explore more Burke-like characters, explore more suits, give us, you know, some other stuff, and you just threw all that away, number one. But number two, here's the thing. If you're keying in off of Weyland-Yutani's work at all, they knew where these things were, remember? Mm-hmm. Remember that the first movie was them sending the crew of the Nostromo specifically to retrieve this life form. They knew where they were. They knew where LV-426 was. So everything that wasn't atomized in that explosion, if the derelict ship, we talked about that, was the derelict ship far enough away from, you know, nuked when they take off from orbit. So what I'm trying to say is there's not a need for Ripley. If you know where they are, and you do, and you know how they reproduce, and you do, and you can get your hands on some eggs, remember you got a ship full of eggs in the derelict. So I'm saying that even though it's 200 years later, all of this stuff would have happened way back in the day of Aliens, just, you know, based on the first premise from the first movie. So they try to make it seem like we just came up with this idea. And then I'm not even going to talk about how she had green and black fingernails. Do you really have nail polish in that thing? Or are you trying to say that your acid blood turned? Did quicks in your nails green and black? Really? I said, really? So, Anyway, so where we're going to go next, and you can comment on that when I throw it back out. But you know, it's just little things like that. I'm like, you haven't, like, I'll give you another example. This is just a tangent. In Terminator Salvation, when Moon Bloodgood, when she smiles, them teeth is too white and pretty for you to be from a dystopian future. Everybody in a dystopian future, them teeth is white and pretty and perfect. As soon as I saw that great big smile, just knocked me out of it. I was like, okay, you're a Hollywood actress playing a role in a dystopian movie. You did not convince me. And so you can't have Ripley with nail polish. Anyway, so... But here's where I'm going next. The characters. I don't necessarily think I agree that the actors were better, because the Alien 3 actors were phenomenal. I do agree that they were completely underused and completely just, you know, so much more we could have gotten out of them because of they had to fulfill the trope, because the alien has to have red shirts to kill. And so Cameron still did it best. Just, there's no arguing that. Although the first movie is still good, but Cameron did it best. But I want to talk about the characters in terms of, you know, Nemesis already talked about the military thing. Which one was your favorite? Which one did you hate the most? You know, which one seems miscast? Because as I look at the cast, what I discovered is that the one I connected with most was Call, the android, was Winona Ryder. And the reason that she was my favorite and I connected the most with her was because in the short amount of time, we heard about her evolution as a droid. And actually, I wanted to see that movie. Because it was, we become self-aware. We realize we're a race of beings created to serve. We don't like it. So we burn our modems and we go independent. That's fascinating. Now, there's a million robot stories on that premise, but I just like the way Carl told it. I'm like, now that would have been something to see. So I found myself empathizing most with her because she was Ripley's mirror character. I'm half one thing, half another, and I'm trying to figure out what I am. It's just Winona did it better for my money. In terms of the worst character, it was like all the rest of them. I couldn't stand any of them. I couldn't stand any. I was like, really? I was like, y'all need to go ahead on and die. Just get face hugged or something. Or one of them got dissected. I'm like, I don't like none of y'all. I didn't care. I was just counting the seconds until they died. I don't know. Them and the scientists were tropes. They were caricatures. They were broad strokes of a character without anything really filled in. And I'm like, I just can't care. But, Carl, when I saw her tap into the motherboard, when I saw her interface with another computer, when I saw all the things that she could do, and she was disgusted with herself. See, now that's the opposite of Data. Data, we have the android that wants to be human, but here we have an android that hates what it is. I don't know what I am, but everything I know about me, I hate it. I hate the milk blood. I hate the modem. I hate I can pull my little USB port out of my forearm. See, I love that. I thought there was something there, but for the rest of them, I was like, yeah, whatever. And I love Ron Perlman, but I was like, it was a caricature for my money. So let me hear your thoughts about characters, and you can talk about the other stuff I said too, but I want to hear who is your favorite, who is your least favorite, and all that. And by the way, Nemesis, my thing that correlates to what you said is musicians. Because I can't stand it when I'm watching somebody play and I know they don't know how to play.
Yeah.
Like their hands are over here, but we're hearing bass notes on the piano. Piano's lower registers to your left. Piano's upper registers to your right. You don't even have to play the piano to know that. So they're doing this kind of thing, and we hear these bass notes. I'm like, yeah. Anyway. So let me hear your thoughts about the characters. Start with Steve.
All right. Before I do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Weyland-Yutani thing, because I think they dropped the ball here. They could have made something really good out of this, which is, okay, we start with the idea that, oh, yeah, Weyland-Yutani, yeah, we're nothing to do with them. We're the military and all that. But they could have basically had it be that there were layers, between them and Weyland-Yutani, but it could still have been Weyland-Yutani pulling the strings. Because, we've seen that there is definitely, even in the real world, a connection between the military and corporations, and what is Weyland-Yutani? I mean, they develop weapons, they develop starships, they do terraforming, they're involved in all this kind of stuff. So, we know that they've been involved with the alien and all of that. So it could have been very, very easy for Weyland-Yutani to be pulling the strings and hide it behind the fact that these guys are the military. Why didn't they do that? That could have been a reveal, and we could have found out that guy that turns traitor later was involved with them, and that explains his heel turn, which was one of my biggest problems with this movie. Why is he turning heel, at that point? What is his agenda? So I hated him the most, to answer the question about who I hated the worst. It's like, okay, why are you turning traitor with these people who are the only ones keeping you alive? And so what? What are you gaining from this? What is your agenda? Why are you doing this? There's no reason for him to act the way he does whatsoever. So yeah, that was the worst. For the best, I really did like Call as well. I do like Winona Ryder a lot, and I think that she really she was into this role. And if you listen to the interviews that she's done, you can definitely tell that she was excited to be in the movie and excited to play her character, and that came across. And I think that helped. But yeah, I think a lot of it was, the idea of the robot being programmed for empathy. It's like, okay, that's interesting. A robot that is sort of programmed to relate to humans and, to be more human. by her creators, which is really really interesting thought. But again, it's like we don't see the idea developed enough. But at least we have that, and at least we have all that. To the remaining characters, I didn't hate them. My problem was is I kept seeing like halfway in the movie, wow, this is Firefly. All these characters are for the most part, based on the characters on Firefly, and some of them are very, very obvious. Ron Perlman's character is obviously Jane. So, I mean, you could fit Jane, Adam Waldwin, into the role, and it would be no different. So it's just like, okay, well, Ron Perlman's playing Jane, and I have fun watching that. That's fine. I thought that the Michael Elgin character, the captain that you're seeing on the screen now, that guy was definitely, playing Mal Reynolds. But the thing of it is that I kind of like this actor because he was the guy who was the warden of the Chateau d'If in Count of Monte Cristo. Yeah, yeah. God isn't even in France this time of year was like one of the best lines from that movie. So yeah, I really kind of appreciated that. But yeah, if you kind of look at it, I mean, some of the other ones are not like exactly one to one. You could argue that Wash was him or that he was the guy in the wheelchair. All of that, but yeah, you can see those two characters were exactly the same, absolutely exactly the same. But yeah, and some of them were more interesting than others, but for the most part, I would say they were better than Alien 3, at least in the sense that you know who they are and you remember who they are. So at least there's that. But by and large, it's nowhere near as good as the cast of Alien 1 and 2, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, you also have to think about, we can buy a silicon-based beast having a circulatory system that can contain liquid that turns into acid upon contact with air. That's not the same as the human circulatory system and what that would do to your heart or your skin if you've actually got corrosive acid. So does it turn into that on contact with the air? They didn't talk about that. I mean, little stuff. It's little stuff like that was in my mind the whole time, that I was like, we get no lines to explain the fusion of all that, but I'm gonna get there in a minute. Go ahead, Bracy. Characters.
Characters. This is going to be pretty funny. My least favorite character is Dan Hedaya, who played the general. He's a great comedic actor. He had absolutely terribly miscast in this role. Like, why would you put this guy in this role? It doesn't make any sense. You need somebody like the actor's name escapes me right now, but like the guy who played the commanding officer in Avatar. Like somebody's real hard ass, real like, I'm going to go get the job done. This is my command. I'm taking charge. That kind of character would have worked out really nice. Probably my favorite characters are one who was playing like a stereotype, but I just love this actor. And another one, I liked him because I like this actor as well. And he dies right away. And that's Michael Wincott, who plays the captain. You guys mentioned Count of Monte Cristo, but for me, he will always be top dollar from The Crow. The guy just has that just amazing gravelly voice, and you just want to hear him speak all the time. And then they kill him. It's like, no, man, this guy had the best voice in the film, And after recently playing in The Crow, I wanted to see him do a little bit more in the movie. Have some badass moments instead of just being cannon fodder. That was pretty shameful as far as I was concerned. So I go back to another one of my genre favorites, and that's Brad Dourif, as the world knows him as the voice of Chucky, playing the mad scientist. And, Dourif does what Dourif does, and nobody does it like Dourif does. And it doesn't matter what movie he's playing, what the budget is, what the role. And I'll say this about Ron Perlman as well. There are some guys who know they're doing like kind of crappy movies, but they still just give it their all. Like total professionals, they totally invest in it. They just totally go for it. And that's one thing I like about Brad Dourif and Ron Perlman. Even though like Ron's like, this isn't the deepest character, but I'm gonna make him as fun of a jerk character as I can. And Brad Dourif's particular way of being over the top as a character actor sort of character is always enjoyable. But if you want to see him in a real role, watch him in Lord of the Rings, where he actually really gets to do some serious acting.
Wormtongue, yeah. I will add one little thing, and that is Joss Whedon had a problem with Brad Dourif because he was too obviously that character, and he wanted to foreshadow, or at least he wanted to obfuscate from that. And yeah, and it's and his problem was, it's like, yeah, everybody's going to know that this is a creepy guy because he's being played by Brad Dourif. Yeah, he was right on that point. He was right.
Because if Chucky was real, he'd look like Brad. Seriously.
Yeah.
But also, I want to throw out. Before I turn it over to Nemesis, once again talking about level of detail, because I pay attention to stuff like that because I'm a writer. It jumps out at me. So the nail polish thing jumped out at me, but also they gave details to characters that didn't go anywhere. So when you see the general taking a shoe polish and it's a block and he melts it, polishes his shoes, that was very graphic. And then he's eating raw lemons. But if you notice that none of the interpersonal interactions between the characters ever goes anywhere. The only relationship that has any type of payoff is Ripley and Carl.
Yeah.
All the other stuff, we see the details about who they might be in a better movie, and then they're just dead. See what I mean? And I was like, why would you go, to those extremes in terms of details and giving us an idea of how anal this guy is and this different kind of stuff? Okay, that's cool. And then he just gets a big old chunk taken out of his neck that he then looks at before he dies? Really? So he's going to get the Wile E. Coyote death where you're dead, but you stand there for a few minutes before you die? Really? Go ahead, Nemesis.
Well, the other thing I'll say about that whole shoe shining thing is you show me a general who's shining your shoes, and I'll show you Fantasyland. So I'm just going to say that right there. I had two least favorite characters. I'll start off with the easiest one, which was I even though I like the characters to a certain extent in the movie, it really disappointed me seeing this again. Gary Dourdan's character. And the reason I say that is because after watching this in CSI, now I got to watch something else he's in because I'm really worried that's the only character he plays because they're the same character, really. So I'm like, I'm hoping he's not always that same person. I hope he's not that actor because I really like what he's been in. So from an in-story point of view, though, man, I'm going to be a pod person again. I didn't like the character of Cal, the android. She annoyed me. So, and I felt that way the first time, and I felt that way the second time. For whatever reason, she came off as annoying and whiny to me. Mm. And all of the stuff, I agree with you. If it had been a movie just about her, she was the most interesting part. But I knew that the movie wasn't about her. I knew that I would never hear any more about the revolution and her, what her character's going through. I knew all of that. And so to me, all I'm hearing is whining for whining's sake in order to whine us through the plot, because you never really mean to take these ideas and run with them and do something else. So that's why, for me, that's why I didn't like her character, because I do agree that her arc and everything about her was the most interesting, but you already knew that it was going nowhere, just like some of the other stuff you were talking about.
Yeah. Now, interesting anecdote. Winona Ryder almost drowned in the tank scenes.
Oh, wow.
More than once. And she said she developed, if she didn't have a fear of water before then, she developed one after that. And that's why I'm glad I didn't get the acting bug, because I'm not getting in the water tank. They're like, bring in the stunt double. I'm like, I ain't doing that. Well, we have divers ready with the oxygen. I don't care. I ain't doing that.
This right here is why I never got into acting. This.
So
made for podcasting.
Yeah.
There's plenty unattractive guys who are doing well in Hollywood.
So now we're going to talk about, because this movie is, again, it's another chase movie once the aliens show up. It's just a chase movie until we get to the end, which is not bad if you do it right, because that's what Terminator 2 is. It's just 10 times better. So we're going to talk about moments, very specific moments, because they definitely tried to give us shocks and reveals along the level of the first movie. Our first shock was actually seeing the chest burster, and our second shock was that Ash was an android. Both done extremely well. And when you saw the movie for the first time, they had you just holding your breath. They were done so well. In this one, they tried to do that, but we'll talk about it. We'll talk about those individual moments. The first thing I do want to mention, however, and you guys can chime in, they once again broke the rules of the story world for a moment. And whenever you do stuff like that, we've talked about it, over and over and over again. If you're going to do that, you have to earn it. You can't just do it to do it. And what they did was, first of all, they took all the colonists whose tubes they stole, put alien eggs in front of them and let the alien eggs hatch in front of them. But we didn't actually see any of that. We saw the beginning of that, but we didn't actually see that play out. The one guy that we do see later, who's got the alien coming out of him, I want you to notice what he did. When he feels the alien coming out, he kind of starts Frankenstein, jerking, stomping around, which is not what Kane did, which is not what the woman that was webbed up in LV-426 did, is not what the dog did, but he's got enough presence of mind and enough control, motor control, to go grab the dude and hold him in front of him and let him chest burst so he can chest burst through his head. And also, that baby alien was like 4 feet long. And the first one was about big as a hot dog with teeth. But so when you do stuff like that, it just takes me out of it, because he's stomping and doing this thing, and I'm like, that's not how aliens come out. You are incapacitated. You're in convulsions. You're whatever is not your, that kind of thing. And then you're got strength and presence enough of mind to hold someone in front of you so you can, chest burst through their forehead or whatever. And it looked like a gag. It looked like a broomstick that they put like plastic wrap around. I was like, really?
What just occurred to me when you were saying that? Is that this ties right into what we were talking about before we got into the podcast that started this? That whole scene could have been fatality. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat.
It shouldn't even have happened, because they should have shot the guy when they minute them find out he had an alien. Why didn't you shoot him?
Oh, man.
Thank you, Steve. Steve once again comes with the truth, because no one lets him live. If we can't freeze him, if there's no chance of him, because Ripley kept saying you're not going to survive it. Remember, she survived it. That's the last shot of her in Alien 3 holding the Queen alien, but okay. Ripley says you're not going to survive it. You're not going to survive it. You're not going to survive it. How do you know all this? I'm the monster's mommy. Okay. Yes, he would have been shot. He would have got 2 to the head and then 2 more to the chest.
Yeah, it's like getting bit by a zombie. Sorry, you're done.
Yeah.
That's what I liked about The Walking Dead in the first season or 2, because they reacted like real people would react, because that's exactly what people would do. But, if there's no hope of extracting it out of you. So there's that whole moment, from the time we see the eggs, which if you notice were noticeably bigger and more mobile, until the time we see the one chest burster in the movie, and it's kind of a gag, like a Saturday Night Live gag is what it felt like to me. So there's that moment. The next moment I want to talk about is the Ripley basketball scene. They did anywhere from 100 to 150 takes, because Sigourney said, I want to do it for real, because she said nobody will believe that you didn't just, CGI in a ball, or somebody dropped a ball that wasn't real. So you got to pull the camera back far enough for them to see is one thing. And that was literally the last shot, because the director was like, if you don't get it this time, we got to move on, because time is money on a studio set. She only got to do all that because she was the lead. So they shot that scene anywhere from 100 to 150 times. I don't remember the exact number. She finally got it on the last one. And it was cool and all, but I was trying to understand, what are you trying to establish about the character? Was it something as simple as extraordinary dexterity, or, or that she's not afraid, or, I got it in the basketball scene where she's knocking people out with the basketball and she's fighting. And we get that this is not Ripley and all that, but I didn't understand like what the point of that was. Like, what's the payoff of knowing she can do that? So she did this really cool, and then so what? At some point, because when we get to the newborn, Lord have mercy, she didn't use any of her powers to defeat that thing except for the acid blood.
Mm.
And I thought it was really interesting that acid, that human alien acid blood, is weaponized whenever she wants it to be. Once again, but anyway, so I just didn't get that moment. Was that just supposed to be a cool moment or whatever? So anyway, so if you got thoughts on that, I'll move on to the next one, but you can talk about that when I throw it back out. Next moment I want to talk about is probably the biggest moment before we get to the newborn. The biggest moment is when we find the previously cloned Ripley alien queen hybrids. That's probably the biggest moment in this film. Now, depending on your take on the film, that's what roots it in horror, because those images were horrific and it was science gone bad, or it was letting you see all the steps until we get it right. And even number 7 was Sigourney underneath the table, and then they created a plastic morph body, which is a grotesque abomination combination of a little bit of the queen and a human body, distorted, that kind of thing. So Ripley number 8, which was tattooed on her arm, could see what it took to get to number 8, and then she ends that scene by flamethrowing all the clones. And they were horrific too. One was little with an extended head. One had an alien teeth coming out of his jaws. Most of them were all the worst parts. And when I watched it, I was like, it took me back to my first point. Like, she wouldn't be cloned with the queen coming out of her in any kind of way. Okay. And so when I saw that, I was like, so again, what was the point of that? Now, I do definitely want to hear your thoughts on that. I'm trying to understand the point of that scene. Were we supposed to feel bad because of what it cost to make a Ripley 8? Or were we just supposed to be grossed out? Or were we supposed to be angry at the scientists? I did not understand the emotional goal of that scene, because it was grotesque and it was horrific. And so what? So let me hear your thoughts about that. Start with Nemesis.
Well, let me start with that first one first. My real problem with that whole scene with the where they find the clones, the different clones they've been growing of Ripley, is that, yeah, it did make a lot of sense to me, the whole premise. I've always had a problem with that. But the other problem I had was, up until a couple of days ago, the first time I saw this movie is when it came out. Or no, check that. I saw it when it came out at the Blockbuster. I didn't go see either of those two movies in the theater. But the problem I had was that I had already seen this done and done better in the X-Files. So when I was watching that whole thing, I was thinking of the plot that had happened in the X-Files only a couple of years before, where they had the alien human hybrids and they were growing them in the tanks and they were finding them and everything. So I'm just sitting there looking at this movie, which I already don't buy, as now having things that were ripped off from other stuff. So the other scene that I really wanted to talk about was the basketball scene. Now, that one made some sense to me, because I thought what they were trying to show there is that this Ripley has super abilities. She's got supernatural abilities, but she's also hyper aggressive. So to have this sense of dominance, like she's got, like suddenly the alien queen has made her into an alpha, which I guess she technically would be, so that she is constantly confrontational and trying to dominate situations and things like that. Plus she has the superhuman abilities. So that made some sense to me. The problem is, just like you said, she didn't use any of those superhuman abilities when push came to shove, and her dominance and all of that. I mean, it's a really crude, ham-handed attempt to try and establish that trait in Ripley 8. So those are the two things that I really wanted to talk about out of everything you're saying there. I agree with your points on most everything else. So yeah, I think that's where I'll go.
Okay, Bracy, thoughts on basketball scene and thoughts on Ripley 8 discovering her clone predecessors?
Yeah, just going ahead and jumping back to the chest burster thing as well. Like Al Ray said, like you shoot him. You shoot that guy. And we all agree that he wouldn't have had the presence of mind or ability. If you look at the first two films, no amount of adrenaline allowed those people to do anything remotely coherent as their sternum is getting ripped apart. So,
Right.
Moving on to the basketball scene. The basketball scene was clearly there to establish that, again, this wasn't Ripley. It's a little bit of bait and switch, as we've discussed. Like, even though I understand it's not Ripley, I can see, like, especially since you brought the Evan Peters things, how people have expectations, and you shouldn't screw with their expectations like that. So I totally get that. But this is asserting how different she is than Ripley. She's not the same sort of Ripley at all. She has all these cool abilities, but that's the problem. As you mentioned, you can't give us a scene like that and not take it anywhere. She does little things with her blood, here and there. But if she's got the super strength and the super coordination, if she doesn't need to use her eyes like an alien to make a shot, why don't we see something like that? Why don't we see like something attacking her and she snatches it from behind with a no look? Why don't we see her using her super strength more prevalently? There's no reason for the aliens to really accept her. So like she should have been their secret weapon. She should have been the thing that was moving them through. Yeah, like, oh, we're all a bunch of badasses, but you're the only one who is physically capable of dealing with these things. It's once again, let's go back to Cameron because he always does it better. It's taking the Terminator and fighting the T-1000. It's the only thing that's going to have a shot at it. That's what Ripley should have been. And we even get moments where like you get these hints that maybe she's going to do something cool, like when she pulls the inner jaw out of an alien. And it's like, oh man, she is really strong. She can do all kinds of cool stuff and never does any of it. We get all this little peripheral stuff she can do, like she can tell the ship is moving through space. Okay, that's cool. That's nice, but like, what are you doing with it? Nothing. Just telling us we're going to crash on Earth. Like, oh, okay, yeah, that didn't make sense at all to me. And to have such a big setup with no payoff, and that is a movie sin. You cannot establish something like that and not have a payoff to it. So that was just bogus. Now, the laboratory scene was probably my favorite part of the movie because that gets back to the original concept of the alien right there, and that's the only horror element we get. The rest of this, like I said, I feel like I'm watching a kind of a comic book, movie from the 70s or 80s because there were some magazine comics out there that got pretty gratuitous with the violence and the sex and things like that. In that period, but this should have been the movie. This should have been the movie. Just like your idea about like the android should have been the movie. Although we have had that movie, we call it Blade Runner. We can still do it. But for me, this should have been the movie. And I was just thinking about this as we were discussing it. The alien, we understand, encapsulates some of the DNA of the host into itself. So maybe you can get this weird hybrid of human and alien as you're trying to, reestablish the DNA, but you're working with, silicone-based DNA, something you never had before, and it takes hundreds of years to kind of figure it out. So you've got all these mutations. Let's not have an actual alien in the film. Let's, in the process, like this Ripley or something like it is the closest we got, or like let's remove her entirely. And I like the moment because the way Sigourney Weaver played it as Alien Ripley, as Ripley 8, and the one cognizant alien Ripley on the table. That was a nice moment, and I like the catharsis of like burning up the stuff, seeing how she has been violated in ways that original Ellen Ripley was always afraid of, and it speaks to that. But this is the movie you had. It kind of becomes Dead Space for me, where you have these hybrid creatures. And they're continuing to mutate and evolve as their DNA is trying to find some sort of weird balance. So you have these half-naked woman, alien, weird creatures running around, and that becomes the new threat of this film. Now, maybe it would have gotten the Halloween season of Halloween 3 season of the witch treatments, like where's Michael Myers? But I think if you'd been bold enough to go in that direction, you would have had a much cooler movie.
I don't know. I really like that as I'm listening to you talk about it. I don't know if I would have accepted an alien movie without an alien, but the idea of that journey being
Or perhaps
more of the story.
maybe we just finally got like one Ripley and one actual alien, and then there's the rest of them, and then maybe these two have to somehow work together because now they've got this weird familial connection to defeat this abomination of a threat. There's
Well,
lots of ways you can play it.
what if they can do stuff that Ripley 8 can't do? What
Yeah.
if they all have different kinds of powers, or they have a different focus, or we introduce something into the mythos that allows the aliens to...
Yeah, all kinds of different attributes of the alien.
Right.
Like, that was handled in the expanded material. Like, what if one was like really severely telepathic, and the other one's super acidic, and the other one's just a savage beast, and just so many ways you could do it. Like, we're never given a precise way of how the aliens see. In the video games, they give them like pheromone vision is one way they deal with it. But like, so what if just this weird kind of understanding they have of their environment? There's so much you could have done with that.
And see, if we're going to have a shepherd book character, that character would be talking about the abomination that all of this is. Now,
Yes.
Call is the one that did that, but we needed a full human that had some type of religious affiliation, kind of just, crying out against these kinds of things all moving along. And that would have even been a bit of a throwback to the monks/prisons we met last movie. But I'm saying there's moral implications and moral and ethical ramifications to creating grotesque hybrid life forms. And then what do you do with it? What if they survive? So as I listen to you talk, there's a great movie there.
Because this
great idea there.
This body horror concept almost speaks to like what Carpenter did with The Thing. Like you could really get extreme with it and really have a lot of fun and make a very memorable movie instead of a very bad one.
See, now that made me think about, what if there was a human that was an alien in disguise?
Oh, there you go.
What if those things could morph like a T-1000? Remember, the original idea for the first Alien movie was to have it imitate Ripley's voice like a Terminator.
Yes.
So that line of "This is Ellen Ripley, the last survivor of the Nostromo," the alien was going to be saying that.
That was a Ridley Scott invention, because that wasn't in the original script that I read.
So what if they took an idea similar to that, and all of a sudden these things can hide in plain sight, like the Cylons in the Battlestar Galactica remake? That kind of thing. There's all different kind of places that can go if the human hybrid idea is the premise of all the action, instead of just... That's really good. I like that. My mind's churning now.
Imagine if everything Ripley 8 did was ultimately to get to Earth so she could start infecting. Like this idea of her being the heroine, just like M. Night Shyamalan twists on you at the end.
That would have been a better last scene. That we discovered that something that's alive that we thought was human is part alien, and its goal was to start an Earth hive.
Yeah.
That would have been a better last shot. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, that would have been interesting, and I think that that's the kind of thing that you would see like in John Carpenter's The Thing. You kind of wonder, can you trust anybody, because any of them could be the alien? Yeah, I can totally see that. Going back to the guy that should have been shot, I have to say that whole thing, I found it unintentionally funny. Just the whole thing, I just couldn't take it seriously. The way that he was just vaulting forward, Frankenstein style. It's like they were trying for creepy. I was just laughing at it. I couldn't take it seriously at all. So a lot of this movie is unintentionally funny, and then sometimes it tries to be intentionally funny and it fails, which I'll get into a little bit later. The basketball scene, yeah, I'm not sure quite what they were doing with that. It just seemed to me like, they're doing what Joss Whedon likes to do with his female characters, which is, have that moment where they're Superwoman, and it just seems like, very much that kind of scene, but it doesn't add up anywhere. And I have to agree, you don't violate the principles of Chekhov's gun like this. So,
yes.
When you try to show that she has these abilities, it has to have some kind of payoff later. And there's one scene where she should have been useful with her super strength, and she never does, which is that whole point where the ship had that hatch that wasn't closing. Gee, maybe the person with super strength should go over and close it. That would have been a perfect point to use that, and they don't use it. So that was just ridiculous. So it's like, okay, they're trying to show her to show off. Maybe she was trying to earn the respect of the crew or something. Okay, I guess, but it's just one of those points where Joss Whedon likes to show off, how tough his women are, and this is just another one of those. So okay, fine. The body horror scene was a missed opportunity, but there were great things in it. Because what really it should have been was a situation where we find out what Weyland-Yutani really was doing. Okay, because we would have seen in this lab the kind of stuff that they were doing. So if it had turned out, okay, we find out that everything that Ripley was told was a lie. And no, it really wasn't that, they were cloning Ripley and this is what came out of it. We find out that, okay, they were really doing, secret experiments trying to breed the perfect alien hybrid, human hybrid, and this is the results that it got. I could have bought that. That would have been really, really great. And it would have at that point shown, what you were trying to say, that the scientists were really unethical and that all the things that they were doing really were sinister and they had to be stopped. And that's why all of these things had to be destroyed. Because, you can't have these things, being continued. You can't have this kind of work being continued. It's inhumane. I will say that I did like the two Ripleys, meeting with the horrific one, asking, please kill me. And Ripley seeing herself in her clone or her previous, version or whatever it was that she was, and then her deciding to burn it. And all of that could have been perfectly dramatic. And then they have this stupid line from Not Jane at the end, which is like, oh, must be a chick thing. It took all the tension out of the scene. You don't do that. You have all this tension from this whole dramatic thing, and then you have this stupid joke, which doesn't even make any sense. Like, it's perfectly obvious why she destroyed that thing. I mean, there's no question. No, she wasn't wasting ammo. Don't give me that. So yeah, that was really stupid. But I will say, beyond that, I kind of help wonder whether they were taking cues from Final Fantasy VII, which I think probably was like earlier that decade, because you have the same thing with the clones being numbered, with the same kind of experiments going on between humans and this thing that was an alien thing, and all these flawed clones being made and all this kind of stuff. I kind of wonder whether there were cues going from that, but all in all, I have to say it was probably handled better in Final Fantasy VII than there was in this movie. But I mean, all in all, there were things that I liked in it. I liked some things that it tried to do, but then they just completely killed it with the tension being destroyed, and then with the not using it to its fullest potential and really showing, the extent of what Weyland-Yutani really was doing in the background or should have been doing in the background. And then just having it just be, okay, yeah, this guy, Brad Dourif, is just, a really weird creep. Okay, that's nice, but you could have had a lot more to it, and it just wasn't there. And it's just a waste of potential. The whole movie is.
Steve, mind if I add something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
And it strikes me because Joss Whedon got involved with the MCU, and that's become kind of a trait of the MCU, is you'll have these scenes where you have these big dramatic moments, and then they get ruined by a joke. Doctor Strange puts on his cloak, this big moment, he is fully Doctor Strange, and then the cloak starts touching his face. Thor watches Asgard come apart as Surtur burns it, and then we got to have a joke about Meek over here and Korg. And I hate those moments, and you just remind me how much I hated that moment again as well.
Yeah,
for the exact same reason. And I don't know if this is
it's a Whedon problem, very much so.
A Whedonism that just keeps perpetuating itself.
Yeah, and he just doesn't know when to stop.
Because we were talking about Mortal Kombat before we came on, if you notice in that movie, Kano is snarky. In a Whedon movie, everybody is snarky. And if there's anything that Ripley ate shouldn't have been. She shouldn't have been snarky. What coming out of that lab, she should have been so psychologically messed up, because I want you to think about how do you respond if you saw all the steps leading up to you being you, and then you had to torture them all. What would that do to you? If you're looking at yourself distorted and distended because the body didn't form right until they got to you, and then you burned all that, that would mess you up in the head.
You see,
yeah, the only plausible way I could see that working is if it was a defense mechanism, to try to cover from the obvious pain that she's dealing with, and she's just trying to snark to get this, the attention off of it. But I don't think that that's a Ripley thing to do. That's something that, a character like Spider-Man would do. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, really.
you see, in my movie that we just ended up discussing a little bit earlier, that's the moment where Ripley 8 decides humanity's not worth it.
Yeah.
That's the
Okay,
moment
now
her switch is flipped.
I want a combination movie between what Bracy said and what Steve said, because that movie would have been better. But I'm going to add a layer, and here's my layer. I would have made it a Section 31 thing.
Mm.
So what I would have done is there would have been a hidden cabal inside of Weyland-Yutani. So the overall company still wanted the alien and the alien eggs. So we keep that going. But there's a hidden cabal inside of maybe something that Burke set up that they didn't know about, that does the human alien hybrid experiments. So we can kind of keep both. So Weyland-Yutani is still the bad guys, but there were people inside the shadow villain that were even more sinister and more, perverted. So they were trying to make the Ripley clones and trying to make super soldiers that way. And maybe all the suits in Weyland-Yutani had no idea, but that was hidden from them as well. So we get kind of like a double reveal. So I want to see that movie now. But anyway, so we're going to move on to some more moments. Now, I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about this next moment before we get to the next big two. But there was one there on the way to the next big two that if I wasn't already thrown out of the movie, it would have drop kicked me like an extra point, because I just couldn't believe what am I looking at. And it's this. You can't have Ripley be an enemy of the aliens and a friend to the aliens. If you're going to try to pull that off, you have to explain it. So everything that we saw up to that point was she reacted more like a human when the aliens were coming. And she tore the tongue out of the alien corpse that killed the captain and blah, 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 blah. And then we get to this scene where the grill is melted and she falls down into a moving nest of aliens like they were hybrid cockroaches. Like they were mutated 9-foot cockroaches, and they're sliming and they're swirling and they're swarming. And she kind of lays back in it like I'm home, or like this is my natural environment, or like this is what I've been waiting to get to. And then when one of the drones is transporting her to the Queen chamber, it looks like, and this was Sigourney's idea, it looks like they're actually hooking up, because the camera's spinning and the light's different, and it's got the sexy music, and and it looked like they're doing the hunka-chunka. I'm like, wait. So I get that you're trying to say, is she human, is she alien, is she both? But up to this point, she's pretty much been siding with the humans, even though she's got that alien DNA. But then this happens, and not only do they not destroy her, but it looks like they were having a thing on the way to the chamber. I'm like, wait. That whole thing just every level, as a fan, as a writer, as a person, I was like, really? I couldn't get with it. I don't understand. What are you trying to imply? Are you trying to imply there's some type of sexual tension between her and the alien? And is that just her? Or just, oh my goodness. I just couldn't with that whole thing. I'm like, no. No, Sexley Ripley ain't writhing around on electric cockroaches that don't belong in this movie. Oh, so let me hear your thoughts about that. Start with Bracy.
Yeah, it's so funny you said they reminded you of cockroaches, because that's the way I felt for the majority of this film. I don't know whose idea it was. I don't know who was like producing it or is like designing the sets and things. I know the director was what's his name?
Genet.
Yeah, Genet, whose work I like. He does rather whimsical, fantasy-esque, dreamy sort of movies. A particular favorite of mine is the Island of Lost Children, which, like this film, seems to have an overabundance of brown to it. And that's one of the key things that made me think about the aliens as cockroaches. They're very brown. They're very organic. As I told you guys last time, I didn't like the design of the Alien 3, what they did with it, because they got away from the biomechanical and started going very organic, which is not the aesthetic of Giger at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it just continues down this path more and more. And I tried to rationalize it that, well, these are alien human hybrids, so they're a little bit different. Maybe because they're coming from a source of human DNA as well as alien DNA. They're not as biomechanical. I mean, they do things other aliens don't do, like they growl and they have breath, and there's just all kinds of things. But yeah, that scene, the way they moved, and then, like you said, the big nesting moment, it just made me think of nothing but a huge swarm of cockroaches, which, on top of everything else you said, which feels very correct, unless Ripley is easily swayed depending on whose company she keeps at the time. That's the only rationalization I can make. That scene did not play out the way they wanted it to, because for me, now these things are among the most revolting creatures possible, because I loathe our palmetto bugs here, the 2-inch long brown American cockroaches that we get, and that's all I could see was giant freaking cockroaches covered in slime, and she's laying in there like she's having a spa day, and I'm not down with that at all. It didn't make any sense to me. She's clearly more human than alien. They're clearly more alien than human. They should be naturally opposed. They should be tearing her apart, or she should be trying to kill them. It didn't make sense at all scenically.
I'm digging on your cat.
Your cat didn't like that scene either, so he just told us what he thought.
Go in the butt. What the cat's doing.
Right. That was just
bubble of disapproval.
Right, that was all cat posterior. Like, I don't like this either.
Yeah.
Before I throw it to Steve, I want to also remind you, correct me if I'm wrong, the scientist said there were 12.
Yep.
That was more than 12.
It was a lot more than 12.
So
maybe they made more. I don't know.
So was it the people you captured from the Betty? Because that was about a dozen people. It was more aliens than a dozen.
I guess crew station.
Go ahead, Steve. Thoughts on Sexley Ripley aiding the electric cockroaches?
It's really worse than even we've been talking about so far, but I'll get into that. I'll start with the point that Joss Whedon said that he never wrote this in the script. Okay, he wasn't sure exactly what happened, but he thought it was the director that put it in. And not wanting to stereotype the French too much, but that sounds like what a French director would do. It's that kind of weird stuff. But it could also have been that Sigourney wanted to do it.
That definitely fit in with his surreal aesthetic.
Yeah, it seems like something that Genet would have done. That's the thing. But here's the problem: is that they later establish that these aliens are her children. I'm the mommy of the monster. Then you get this weird incest vibe with her alien baby. What the hell is this?
Okay, we're going to get there in a minute, but incest. Let's put a pin on
This is creepy.
incest.
It's alien incest.
Oh,
what the hell is this? So rather than it looking, all artistic and sensual and all of that, I'm just creeped out and grossed out because there's a cognitive dissonance that I have between what's on the screen and what is going on in my head, making connections with this film. It's absolutely disgusting when you think about
Oh
that.
my
Adding to the
Lord.
disgust of the whole cockroach connection. I mean, cockroaches are pretty disgusting anyway. I don't need any cockroach incest in my movies. Thank you very much. What is this? So yeah, it's clearly like they were trying to be clever. They were trying to be artistic, and it's just terrible on any conceivable level. It's terrible, and it took me out of the movie. And why did you do this?
Well, nothing we've seen of the creatures, especially what we saw in Alien 3, we cut that some slack because it was a dog, because that's the first time we saw them actually eat humans.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing we've seen from the creatures shows anything less than total aggression at all times, unless, like Newt, they're taking you to the egg chamber to be a host, or less like the dog alien, they smell an alien on the inside of you and won't kill you because you're going to birth something. But other than that, they come straight at you. And so this was, I was like, go ahead, Nemesis, thoughts about the electric Ripley doing electric slide with the nasty cockroaches.
I have to say that just reliving these moments, listening to you guys describe them, is more horrific than this movie was. So it's like, oh man, it just gets worse. And there's another layer, it just gets worse and worse. This is just, it's just weirdness. And to be honest with you, I hate to keep coming back to this, but every time I think about, it just keeps clicking in my head. This movie just reminds me of like a Frankenstein's monster of all kinds of different ideas from other properties that were around the same time. It just seems unoriginal in that way. And I don't know, maybe this is being really unfair to Joss Whedon, who wrote the movie, but that's what it feels like to me. It feels like he had this idea for Firefly in his head, and then he needed all this subplot to go with it. So he just started stealing stuff from everything else and just threw it into a screenplay and probably got a paycheck and went off and started getting ready to do Buffy and Firefly or something. So, or I guess he had already done Buffy at that point. But so this scene is just really strange. I think you guys hit on, the really incredibly disturbing thing. Now that Steve pointed out the incest part and everything of the, the sex with the cockroaches, that was really weird. But the biggest thing that disturbed me was the fact that somehow the queen had been mutated.
Well, we're going to get there in a minute.
Okay. So we're going to talk about a separate moment. But so that whole concept of bringing her in there, and then the reveals are going to come later. And once again, we're changing a number of things. And I even felt that way to a certain extent when the aliens attacked the third alien to burn through the thing. The aliens are hyper aggressive, but we never see them like plan and come up with this treachery amongst themselves and this, and this whole Shakespearean thing. And they turn on the third one and it's screaming and everything. It's like, what are we supposed to get out of all that? And they're just throwing stuff at us like that. And they did that here too, as we've got all this new information, which really doesn't jive. And we're supposed to just accept it and move on. And it's just a real problem on top of all of the kinky stuff with the porno music playing and everything else. So.
And they would even know by destroying a brother that his acid would melt through that floor.
No.
See, this is the smart shark moment. The whole premise of Deep Blue Sea is that the sharks were smarter. Okay, being smarter does not give you more information.
Mm-hmm.
You would not know what humans know just because you're smarter. But the sharks did, and the aliens did. And I'm like, no, you have to explain that if you're going to make us buy that, which leads me into what you just talked about, which was one of the big two moments, because we're still not at the newborn yet, but we're at this moment, which once again, I was like, this is another one. And, we're definitely very repetitive sometimes. This is another one where it would have been a better video game. If you give me a video game where some options were to play as just humans, colonial marines, just human civilians, human alien hybrids. If you took all the characters in this movie and put them in a video game and they're playable characters, that's already better than the film. But what happens here that just made me say, this was worse than Spider-Man. Now, y'all know one of my issues with Spider-Man has always been that he got everything but spinning his own webs. I can't stand it. I know people have defended it to the death about it's Peter's genius and he needs to make the web shooters. I came up with a way he can still do that, but you can't sell me on him getting everything but spinning webs because that's what spiders do, especially super spiders like Raimi's Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire. That was a super spider. That's 8 spiders in one. Can't spin no webs, but he finally got organic webs. That's why I like Tobey's version. But anyway, this movie wanted us to believe that the strands of DNA had a conference and and say, we're going to take the ovaries and the uterus from Ripley. So now this thing that doesn't do anything but produce these horrific facehugger eggs has ovaries, has a cycle, has a human kind of no. The whole premise of the alien is alien. The whole premise was that when we meet the queen, we see her slurping down the eggs with the facehuggers inside, and that was so scary. But now she's screaming in labor like a human woman would, and she's got 2 big old external ovaries, I guess. I don't know what that was. Y'all can tell me, whatever that was. And she's in labor, and no, Mike, no. That's the wrong way to go, because just on the science alone, like I said with my Spider-Man example, we finally got a Spider-Man that can shoot webs himself. You know, I love that. but for her to adopt a human reproductive system, now that is not my forte. People that are more learned in that area than me can correct me if I'm wrong. But that whole thing is you would have to have the whole system, because where does the seed come from now if she's releasing eggs from ovaries? What fertilizes that egg if it's a human system? And is it now because they seem to have asexual reproduction for the eggs just from the queen, and then we know that the whole thing about how they impregnate living things is more like a form of rape or whatever. But we meet the alien king in the books, but it's not in the films, so we can't count that in the films. And so now that changes in terms of the way living things reproduce. That changes everything if she's got that type of thing. And then, you know, the other thing is there's an antagonism. So on the one hand, Ripley's human and part alien, and then she's doing the electric slide with the boogaloo aliens, and then she meet the queen, and I'm like, wait, y'all need to make up your mind. All these mythology shifts just hurt my brain. I'm watching, I'm like, no, none of that would happen. That doesn't make any sense. And I'm just like, and we still not to the newborn.
Yeah.
We're just talking about the queen.
Oh.
So let's hear your thoughts about that. Go ahead, Nemesis. You started talking about the queen being mutated, because I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
I mean, you hit on the whole, you know, the fact that now the DNA has somehow transferred between 2 different species, and all of this going on, and you talked about just her being in lair. I think you hit on those points perfectly. But the one thing that really got me here was they're trying to make us buy into this concept that that the alien is almost like symbiotic at a certain level. So there's like a symbiosis, but it goes 2 ways, you know, so that we look at Ripley's case, she got supernatural strength and acid blood, and she's tough and all this other stuff. So we figured that we're giving the best traits between the 2 species, and the best trait that they gave to the alien queen was a human reproductive system. You didn't get a 4-chamber heart. You didn't get increased lung capacity, you know, a 2-hemisphere brain, you know, none of that. So it's like, I just couldn't get past that.
All that cool human stuff.
Yeah. So I just couldn't get past that point. to even get into, as I was watching the film, everything else. I mean, that's the thing with this movie is there's big old huge red stop signs for me everywhere. It's like every direction I try and go, I'm running into a brick wall. I can't get past it, So yeah, I mean that's where what I really got was like all of a sudden out of nowhere I've got that, and I was just like, that is a lot you're asking me to digest right now in the heat of this moment. So yeah, it was kind of really weird. It was really weird.
And the dwarf scientist was there talking about that was Ripley's gift to it.
Yeah.
Labor. You're a woman in labor. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Steve. Thoughts about the mutated queen?
Really stupid. The whole thing is really, really stupid. You guys both covered on a lot of those things, and I'm with you, TT. Where did they get the seed from? Did they get it from Dura? Do I even know? I don't think I want to know that. I don't think I want to know the answer to that because that sounds ridiculous. But I had one other question that kind of came to my mind that immediately took it out of it. If they could adapt a human reproductive system like this, why didn't they do it all the way back in the previous two films? If they had this ability to do this, I don't even believe that it's the hybrid aspect. I don't even think that they could do it. If they were able to physically adapt, human biology to service us, to paraphrase the Borg, then they would have done this when they had the colonists at Hadley's Hope. They could have done it with the people on the Nostromo. They didn't do any of this. This is the first time that we've seen it in 4 movies. They didn't do it in the Alien 3 either. So, this is something that they completely, pulled from their posterior on this one completely. It makes absolutely no sense at all. It's not consistent with the alien lore that we've seen. It's not consistent with anything we've seen the aliens do. And it's not internally consistent in any sort of biological way, even by comic book or type of science. There is no way that you can make me believe that they would have adapted this. And plus, I don't even think they need a human reproductive system. They have a much better one, just implanting eggs into hosts. Why? They've already said it's the ultimate survivor. It's already designed to be the ultimate survivor. What do they need humans for to adapt them for? They're trying to make them the biological version of the Borg, except that it makes absolutely no sense the way that they've executed it. And honestly, I just find all of this laughably bad. All of it just makes me laugh. It's just ridiculous. So I mean, honestly, this movie is getting into so bad it's good territory with how absolutely ludicrous it is, because I can't take any of it seriously. It's awful.
Now, before I throw it to Bracy, like we talked about before at the end of Aliens, where the story wanted to go was going back to their home world and seeing where they came from and giving Ripley, Hicks, and Newt some type of conclusion. What I would have wanted to see based on this idea was them doing like Predators would do in terms of, let's say there's a mutated one of them, and then the other aliens would attack that one because it's weak or different. Mm-hmm. That is something.
Yeah, they did something similar with the Daleks in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Right. So we could understand that from a Earth-based point of view, that if there's any type of predatory creature, living thing, and it detects weakness, if there are other enemies that are its predator, it's going after the weak one, the way, felines hunt the gazelles with the broken leg or the ones that are running slower. Okay. And so if we had seen a scene on a homeworld where we see a mutated alien and it's got something about it that makes it weak or just different, and we see the other aliens attacking it, I would have bought that. But this is just, I don't know. So thoughts on the Mutated Queen, Bracy, which sounds like a band. Mutated Queen. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's fine. Getting into the broader aspect of the human-alien hybrid, that made me think of something very interesting. This would have been an interesting plot point if the alien hybrids were made as a defense against the natural aliens. There's a cool idea right there. There's a cool concept. We have something that's got like a little bit of genetic relation to us, so maybe it's something that's actually controllable, whereas the regular xenomorphs aren't. Although you can't get anything good out of us from the alien because, as Ash has told us, perfect organism. So what do the aliens get from us? They get only weakness. We get something we've never seen in the aliens before. They turn on each other, even if it's strategically. They turn on each other. Hive creatures don't do that. And the aliens have been established as a hive creature. You wouldn't see a bunch of bees sacrifice another bee to escape an enclosure. So I found that kind of interesting thinking about that. And then once again, we dumb down the alien queen by giving her a reproductive system. So two questions come to that immediately. First of all, who impregnated her? Secondly, where did all the eggs come from? If this thing has a human reproductive system, where's the ovipositor? What's been laying the eggs? Surely not this thing. I don't think they've all been coming out of a vagina. And like Steve said, the alien as she was is far superior to creating an army of creatures to serve her than something with a reproductive system, even if it seems to have an accelerated faculty to it. I don't buy this thing laying eggs. And so because of that, I don't buy any of the eggs that they've had previously. So there's huge plot holes right there. And all it does is weaken the alien. And as a further trivia note of travesty here, they didn't actually have an alien queen for the production, and they found out that somebody had the full-scale head left over from the Aliens movie, and they got it from him to use in the film. And then they slapped the face off. It was like, no, don't you destroy that thing. So it was like insult to injury. You gave her this ridiculous womb, this ridiculous offspring, and then you destroy this beautiful piece of Stan Winston's work.
Just abomination, like the Mr. said. Okay, now we're down to the pièce de résistance, the cherry on top of the sundae, the abomination of all abominations that just, if you had hair, you would scratch it off. You're bald-headed by the time you get through with this one. Because we have come to the newborn. Now, I can't make heads or tails of this creature. I just think somebody said, sitting in a room somewhere, wouldn't it be cool if an alien had eyes? And I think it's go deeper than that, because nothing about it is what Bracy just said. They were already the perfect organisms. They already had a perfect reproductive system. They already, like Ash said in the first movie, could survive anything. Because remember, the first alien and the queen alien in Aliens did not die. They got blown out into space. Okay, the only alien that died was the dog alien in 3 and this one. So that means they could still be out there somewhere. You never know. But the weakness now, bringing your antagonist down a few notches on the threat ladder, is ridiculous. And so we get this thing that, wait now, has a pot belly. Now, wait. You know, Bracy said it best, moving away from Giger's biomechanical drawings and story world, because we have the alien homeworld already laid out for us. But moving away from that and becoming more and more organic, and now doing this kind of thing, this thing has a shape that is not made for any type of hunting, any type of sleek design or movement. It's absolutely disproportioned, with a distended belly and not quite the alien head. And the most it had, I guess, was teeth, you know, or whatever. But in terms of its hunting ability, with what we saw it to be, that, you know, that it's just such a step down, it's ridiculous. And then on top of all I've already said, as we said before, Ripley's the mama, or the thing, because the newborn kills the queen alien and snuggles with Ripley. I was like, wait, hold on just a minute. This thing really think that Ripley is the mama? And when they were snuggling, it was, I'm like, how is this thing? Because it did attack The scientist that did, eat a chunk in his head, that's full alien. But when Ripley is cooing like a baby, I'm like, wouldn't no big cockroach with a big belly with diamond teeth made out of peanut butter to be snuggling with Ripley 8? What is wrong with y'all? So I'm just looking at this thing and I'm just, that's why I never watched this movie, even when it's on TV for free. I have never watched, except to review, obviously. I've never watched this film. If I see it coming on, I'm like, well, that opening sequence is kind of cool. And then, nope, got to go. Because I'm looking at the newborn, I'm like, there's nothing about this creature that's a good idea. There's nothing about this creature that extends the lore in a positive way. And then it is shocked by Mama Ripley's betrayal of it. And she's saying, I'm sorry, but you got to go because it's a predator, but it's nice to her, but it's threatening the robot. So then she used the weaponized acid blood that's now just conveniently whatever she needs it to be. And how does this thing go out? It gets sucked into the vacuum of space, one molecule at a time. Yeah? So the original Ripley climbed up against the vacuum of space. And if Bishop hadn't been there to catch Newt, Newt would have been gone. But now this thing, however many generations later, can't pull itself away from a crack on the window that big because now all of a sudden the vacuum of space works like the vacuum of space when you need it to. Okay, so anyway, those are my thoughts. I'll throw it out, start with Bracy. What do you think about the newborn, his relationship with Ripley, and how it goes out? Because I'm going to need to eat a slice of pizza after this.
I'm an artist. One of my passions is character and creature design. And if you go onto my DeviantArt account at Bracy100, you'll see many examples of where I've done that on commission and just for myself. I've got this whole series inspired by Matt Frank, who did Godzilla Neo, and I did my own kaiju recreations done in if I was making the movie today, what would I do with it? And I like that kind of exercise a lot. And I have one of the greatest compliments I got given by somebody is they said a lot of my creature designs look like designs done for a movie, because even with the wildest things I put together, I try to put in a sort of a real world physiological aspect to it. I want to make something that's fantastical, but also has that weight of belief to it, no matter how distorted the body might be. So, looking at this creature with that sort of a critical eye, I am aghast. When you learn how to design, if you're going to design from a biological perspective, you understand that form follows function. And I love the guys at Amalgamated Dynamics. They do so many great things. Tom Woodruff has been playing the alien himself for forever now, ever since Alien 3. But I don't understand this design. It's so far below what these guys are capable of. Especially if you go on their YouTube channel and see, for instance, the designs they created for the Thing prequel that got all replaced by just really awful CGI. Look at the wonderful things they're capable of. And it's like you said, you can look at this thing and it doesn't work. It's gangly, it's awkward, it's overbalanced. And worse than that, because we know that the alien is a perfected predatory creature. And this thing, okay, it's strong enough, I'm going to establish myself. I can kill an alien queen with one blow. Okay, do something else cool. No, I can't, because I'm half suitmation, half rod puppetry. We're not going to do CGI on this thing because that would just be a bridge too far. And that makes it ridiculous. And by removing the exoskeleton, this thing is just stupid vulnerable. Everything about this thing screams vulnerability to me. It might be strong enough to kill, but it is so vulnerable. I think a pulse rifle would have been all they needed to take it down. It's got vulnerable eyes now that you can see. It doesn't have an armored body. It's got these stupid limbs. It's got the pop belly. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, because if you look at maquettes and toys too, it's got a vagina that runs halfway up that belly, which they probably censored out. and just everything about it just screams, kill me. I'm really kind of easy to kill. I might be able to kill you, but you can kill me way better than I can kill you. And that's not what you want in a monster. And everybody knows if you are going to move on move on with a franchise, or even just sequels to a film, there is a purposeful ramping things up. We went from the alien, one very, very scary organism. Aliens, we got a whole bunch of them, but even that wasn't good enough. Camera even up past that. He gave us the alien queen. If you're going to give us the next evolution of the thing, the next dangerous thing, at least do something like I know you guys are like kind of hate them, but at least like in Prometheus, we get a really cool antagonist in David. He's the dangerous thing. He's the next evolution of a dangerous character in a franchise because he is powerful and he's really freaking smart. This thing was garbage, and I'm glad it got flushed out into space because I hated every second it was on the screen.
Every second. That's a very interesting perspective. I'm glad you said all of that because all of that is brilliant. Art design, just from an art design point of view, it doesn't work. And it's we need a word that's deeper than lazy because it's deeper than lazy. If this is lazy, it's here. So no, that was brilliant. I'm glad you brought that out. What I would have done, well, I would have had them go back to the home world and I would have made it be one king in all the universe. Since it established that there could be more than one queen, I would have made it be, because some animals work that way. There's one rooster, there's one, male, and then he impregnates all the females. So on the home world, the reveal there in my movie would have been the one alien king, which is the one that goes around, and that's why there's aliens all over the world, because that alien king somehow.
That's a good biological perspective that we can understand, and something they actually did in the movie Reign of Fire. They had all these dragons around, and they had one big dragon that was
one male.
Bird.
Right. See, so that could have been, because we're talking about evolutionary cycles of the creature, that could have been one that made sense. That also would have been a good wrapping up of Ripley, Hicks, and Newt's arc, and also sets up more stories. Because if this thing has been all over, we don't know how many aliens are out there on how many worlds. So, but anyway, we got this mess. So go ahead, Steve. Thoughts on the newborn and its design, its relationship with Ripley, and how it goes out.
It's ridiculous. The whole thing is terrible. I'm kind of in agreement with you. I mean, it should have upped the threat. That's really what it should have done. You should have found something that was horrific, even scarier than the last creature, because that's what you want to do. Especially for basically what is the final boss of the arc of the story. So it needed to be something that was much, much more threatening. And so what we have is this hideous thing that is not hideous in a scary way, but hideous in a laughable, ridiculous way. And the thing that loses me is the puppy dog eyes on this thing. It doesn't look like something that you would be scared of. It looks like something you want to take home and pet and give dog food to. I mean, it's just absolutely stupid. And it's like, I can't take this thing seriously. I can't take it seriously as a villain or an antagonist. So here I am watching this thing, and it's like, no, this is ridiculous. And when this thing tries to, go after Brad Dourif, let's leave Ripley over there, and we're gonna go and go after the Queen, but we're gonna say that Ripley's the mother. Why? Why does the creature attach itself to Ripley over its actual parent? What is there about Ripley, that it decides to do that? Like, if there had been enough time, for Ripley to bond with the creature and say, okay, I'm gonna play the mother of this thing so we can get out of here, or something that would have been clever. It would have been stupid, but it would at least have been semi kind of plausible. Kind of. No, this is just ridiculous. And then you have Dourif getting killed in the most ridiculous way. Why did Dourif think that he was going to survive that? Why are you trying to French kiss this alien newborn thing? And it's just no, this is dumb. And then and it's just all of this, and then the final scenes get even more stupid. Again, how the heck does it end up in the ship? It's even worse than when it did in Aliens. They would have noticed this. There would have been a weight gain, like we talked about before. It would have been on the ship. There would have been some lag on the thrusters. Why in the world is it on this thing? How did it get in? Everything was closed except for that one hatch, and you would have seen it coming in. No, it just happens to already be in there because it can teleport all of a sudden. Gee, that's a new one on me. And then you have this whole scene where, let's have him threaten Call. Why is it threatening a robot? The alien queen impaled Bishop, but that's because it was in her way. The Call's not in her way. This is so dumb. And then let's go ahead and rip off like the first two movies, and using explosive decompression to get rid of the alien because we did that before. Why don't you find a new way to do it? At least the bit about using freezing on it in the jail cell was different. This, if it had been something like that, I would have said, okay, that's a new way of doing it. No. Let's just throw it out into space yet again. I mean, and this keeps coming up, and we're going to see it again in Covenant 2, and all of this is just no. The whole thing is a complete fail. Ridiculous villain, ridiculous scenes, ridiculous threat, things that don't add up and don't make sense, and it's completely laughable and stupid.
So I don't know if I had read that thing had a birth canal. I don't remember, but I keep thinking of it as a he, but it's actually a girl. So that's Ripley 8 and her hybrid daughter with a birth canal, and it's just get away from me.
If you look
go ahead, Nemesis, thoughts on the newborn design, relationship with Ripley, and how it goes out.
Wow. Okay.
Wait,
what can you say? It is so bad story-wise. There really is nothing I could add to Steve. And we've said this before. Steve is the most optimistic of all of us. He's like the most kind-hearted of all of us.
Yes.
So I'm going to really touch on a couple things story-wise, and then a couple of the design things. Story-wise, just the whole idea of the way this thing looks, its musculature, it seems like Jeff was saying just absolutely inferior to the product that came before. So it makes no sense whatsoever there. Not to mention that we have gone, and this is in the design for a second, you've gone from some precise, sleek, new original art form that you've done to a melted candle mess. It's just a mess. It looks like somebody dropped a bunch of clay on the floor and it ended up in that form, and then kind of just did the stick figure treatment for it, and that's what you got. And they trotted it out. They put some of those little bugly eyes on there, and they let it out there, which is really disturbing. So then let's go to the next story point I have a real problem with. They're all the premise is just dumb. We've got all the problems that Steve was talking about, but then this thing gets sucked up against the window, and it's getting, like DT said, it's getting pulled out, right? So I presume, like most creatures, unless we're really breaking everything, that as it's bleeding out and being torn apart by the vacuum of space, which even then I think the Mythbusters did this and proved that it's kind of a stretch that could happen, but let's put that aside for a second. I'm presuming it's bleeding, right? Mm-hmm. When you're inside and getting pulled out, you're bleeding. Well, did this thing, of all the things that it's gotten, I mean, this thing has really been hit with the ugly stick. It didn't get the acid blood. Is that what we're supposed to assume? Or is there another reason why the hole of the ship just doesn't keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger as it's melting through the ship? That makes no sense whatsoever. And then the final thing I'm just going to say is that it looks really bad. Like, look at stills from the film, and it looks really bad. It looks like something from a Harryhausen movie, and I'm sorry to even say that because Harryhausen was brilliant for his time, but this is 1997, that this movie came out. So it's not looking brilliant anymore. And then the other part was, and this goes straight to Steve's eyes thing. When I looked at this thing and I saw the eyes and everything else, I was like, no, they didn't. They brought in the actor who played the melted Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and put him on the screen from Ghostbusters. They put him out there. Yeah. They took him after he got melted at the end of Ghostbusters 1, and they put him right into this movie. That is just disrespectful, and I'm really against this movie for that. So.
It's just, and writers, pay attention that when you've created something that nobody has anything good to say about, this is a creature that does not have one redeeming quality. It's not scary. It's not sleek. It's nonsensical. It would be a terrible predator. It's a girl, kind of like a human girl from the waist down now. It's nothing about it makes any sense. And I'm going to point out, keying in off of what Nemesis said, that thing was alive as it was being sucked out because it kept screaming.
Yeah.
Remember, it keeps screaming until the last little kibbles and bits goes out the window. How?
Not only that, I mean, we kind of talked a little bit about it. You know, you shouldn't make things with the eye of selling toys or statues or anything else. But at the same time, if you do something really cool and it looks really nice, those kind of things happen because people want to buy them. They want to buy artwork. They want to buy. Can you imagine buying the alien human hybrid body sculpt or action figure and putting that on your?
I don't have big eyes. I mean, the reason that they have big eyes in anime is to make them look deliberately cuter. They put big eyes on something they wanted to make scary. It's stupid.
And the most alien collectors I know, nobody has a toy of this thing. It's not just that it has a vagina; it's got a couple of saggy teats on his chest. The fact that he's got like this bat-like leaf nose, but there's no nasal cavity connecting the nose. It's just like it's a nightmare of design. I can't get over how bad it is.
Yeah. I mean,
seriously, on every level.
If you gifted that action figure, and I think there's actually one out there. I can't believe they made it. If you gifted that to a geek friend of yours, they'd wonder what you did to make you hate them. They really would. They'd be like, "What did I do, man?"
I grill.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's awful. Okay, last point. We're coming up on 2 hours. Last point, and here's another one. Now, this last point I'm going to make, we could have done a whole podcast on this. Okay, and here it comes. Out of all the biggest missed opportunities we've already talked about, we get the literal final shot of the movie of Ripley 8 making it back to Earth. Last lines are, Paul says, "What happens now?" Ripley says, "I don't know. I'm a stranger here myself." Now, wait just a minute. The whole biggest running joke, if you will, about the Ripley character is that once she left on the Nostromo, she never made it back to Earth. The closest she came was the space station in Aliens, and that's when she was having her bad dreams, and she was running the power loader, trying to rebuild whatever life she could after she found out her daughter was dead. But she never actually makes it back to Earth. And then she ends up on Fury and she dies in the molten lava. This creature, however, Ripley 8, the hybrid thing, does make it back to Earth. Now, this to me was just like the ending of Voyager. They didn't seem to understand that the ending of Voyager should have been one more hour showing what happened when they disembarked, because they would have immediately seized 7 of 9. And Janeway would have had to fight. Again, it would have been a completely different fight. If you've got a surviving ex-Borg on your ship back in the Alpha Quadrant, because everything about that's a bad idea. She could have an interplexing beacon built in. There's no way they just walk off of Voyager, is my point. So just like that, here you've got a Ripley alien hybrid actually coming back to Earth. And they've been selling us all movie long that she has fantastically Ripley's memories. Really? So now she's in the Earth environment, and you have the most unique creature on Earth is now on Earth. You have a human alien hybrid with the memories of Ellen Ripley. Now, can you not see that's a whole tome? That's a whole Marvel universe worth of movies, that kind of thing. And all we get is that one little line at the end, and then the happy people music and all that, and that's it, really? And they never revisit that idea. Because what would happen when Weyland-Yutani or the military or whatever's in existence in that time period discovers that the functioning Ripley clone is actually on Earth? What if Call had something built into her that she didn't know about that transmitted that data? I mean, there could be, bounty hunters, there could be headhunters, there could be religious zealots, there could be any number of places you can go if you're going to let this Ripley thing survive to the end and make it back to Earth. And the most we get is a little moundscape shot, and then we never see it again. And out of all the bad ideas in the movie, if you're going to end like that, that should at least have been a setup to the next stage of a thing, to where we see what happens with that, because there's so many places that goes if she finally makes it back to Earth. Would she have the memories of Ripley and try to find, because her daughter didn't have any children, would she look up anything? Did your bloodline survive some other kind of way 200 years later? What's the technology like on Earth? I mean, it's a whole story world, I'm telling you. And all we get is a little, I guess, wink at the end, like it's not even that big of a deal. And I was just like, because I thought sure the next movie was going to be The Adventures of Ripley 8. I thought sure that's where the franchise was going, because, so let me hear your thoughts on that, and then we'll wrap up. Let me hear your thoughts on the movie ending on this little quip with Ripley and Call making it back to Earth, and then that's all we get. Start with Nemesis.
Yeah, I have the exact same problem that you do, for the reasons like when I said my least favorite character was Call, because it sounded whiny to me, because she was talking about all these things that I know I'd never see again. They were just thrown in there for fake drama, as far as I was concerned.
Right.
I felt the same kind of way here. I had different visions of what could have been, but I just knew it was not going to happen. So much of that wasn't going to happen, because for me, my question is, okay, one of the things I have is she a good guy or a bad guy, Ripley 8? I don't know for sure. I can't answer that question. But if she gets down to Earth, she's now an invasive species. She's not human anymore. If she mates with a human, what happens? These are the type of things I start to think about. Then I have the whole thing with the android, and it sounds like there's like a rebellion going on and things like that. I already know we're not gonna go. But there was some really cool stuff there, but that's no longer Alien or Aliens or anything else. That's number one. That's Ripley 8, if she starts doing that kind of stuff. And then, but yeah, so it asks questions that I didn't even really care to know the answers to anymore. and it set stuff up that you knew was never going to pan out. And going back real quick, though, I definitely agree. Jeff was talking about how we had seen Cal in Blade Runner. And that's the other thing I was thinking of. It's like, if you want a fan theory about where this movie could have led to, the numbering on the dates got reset or something, because basically you could say that this movie is the beginning of Replicants and Blade Runner. Yeah. It's like there's some weird alien human hybrid. God, I should be writing for Supergirl now. The alien human hybrid and got together with Call, Ripley 8 and Call got together and created the first replicant, and then some company took it and they, redesigned it. That's how we got replicants and everything leading up to Deckard and all that. So there you go. This Alien and Blade Runner tie together. Exactly.
Wow. And Ripley 8 could have started Earth Hive.
Yes.
Earth Hive, the first alien novel. Go ahead, Bracy. Thoughts on the ending with Ripley 8?
It's funny, Nemesis talks about the Alien Blade Runner connection, because Ridley Scott actually did that with Prometheus. There was some promotional material that came out that wasn't included in the films, and the head of Weyland-Yutani actually talks about his competitor in making humanoids, whereas his synthetic, the replicants are biological recreations of humans. not cyborgs or androids like the Weyland-Yutani stuff is.
Ooh,
So
I
the
love
connect
that.
this Scott did go ahead and tie them together. See, my thoughts upon the ending, as I said in my iteration of the ideas for the film, that when she gets there, because Ellen Ripley, or not Ripley, but Ripley Yates has never really been on anybody's side except her own. You know, her famous opening line is, "Who do I have to F to get off this thing?" You know, it's just about survival, which, you know, if she's adapted from the perfect organism, that's precisely what she would be about. Now, she is on a planet. She is free from all of her handlers. She finally, for her first time, has agency. What is she going to do with it? As we wondered how the alien queen laid or gave birth, my immediate thought is, well, what's going on with Ripley's reproductive system? I kind of envision a scene where, like, she's off alone doing her own thing. Maybe she's had a guy over. The guy leaves, and you see her like pulling up her pants, and then like she turns back, you know, over her shoulder, and there's a closet with several like Fabergé sized alien eggs, and you see a skitter of like a face hugger or two creeping around, like little hand sized face huggers, and it's like, this is how it's going to start. This is how Earth Hive begins. I would totally make her the villain, and that's where I would take my next film.
Wow.
Wow. That still might be interesting to see. Go ahead, Steve. Thoughts on Ripley 8 and her ending?
Yeah, before I get to that, I'm going to point out this last big problem with the movie, and that is all life on Earth should be destroyed. And the reason I am saying this is you had a massive space station, you know, coming in hot at high speed with a huge amount of mass. Okay, we have seen the actual damage that large meteorites have done to the planet Earth, and it got rid of the dinosaurs. Okay, we have had Joss Whedon do a movie in the Avengers about what would happen if a large city, size object, falls from a great height into the planet Earth. Okay, this freaking installation, had it crashed, should have ended the planet Earth. Okay, and no, everything's fine. It just crashed and it's okay. No way. Everybody on Earth should have been dead except for the people on the ship. Okay, so yeah, there's your last big plot hole before we get away from this. They missed so many opportunities with this. You had the Firefly crew and Ripley 8 and all that. I like the relationship that could have been between her and Call, because you have Ripley, who is this ultimate survivor, who is definitely not somebody with moral agency in the way that Ripley was. And she's trying to learn to be human. And meanwhile, you have the robot, who is all about being human, who is connecting to Ripley. So you could have had a really great relationship between the two, with Ripley adopting Call as like her new Newt. She could have played that role very, very well. And I think you could have had a new family between them and the remaining crew of the Betty. And what I probably would have done after that would have been, okay, they're going to go and find out the source of these aliens, and they're going to destroy them. All of these guys together going out, hunting aliens, finding the alien homeworld, and getting to the bottom. Well, there's no point in getting to the bottom of the conspiracy, really, unless they're on another planet, because, Earth is destroyed at this point. There's nothing left of it. So they go out and go ahead and do that, and I think that you could have had a really, really great movie with the not Firefly crew and Ripley and all of that, just going out and being alien hunters, and you could have had an entire franchise based on that, and you could have had some pretty good stuff there. You could have Ripley be the captain. There's no reason why she couldn't have been by that point. You get all, and you got a lot of really decent characters there still. I mean, you've got Perlman, you've got the Breeze, who was okay. So you had, these characters that you could have developed and made, into that kind of family crew, and you could have had them go out and hunt aliens, and you would have had plenty of room in which to build more films. There's so many missed opportunities, in addition to the horrible plot hole that they left this ending. What an absolute mess.
Absolute mess. Alien Resurrection, Abomination, absolute mess. So I'll wrap everything up by saying this is why you want to work on your craft. This is why you want to get your script tight. If you ever want to make a film, every element of a film has to come together, from the script to the casting, lighting, directing, producing, makeup, sound effects, sound design, the score, which is not the same as the soundtrack, editing, runtime, you name it. A movie has many, many different musical parts, but very moving parts, not musical parts, moving parts. But very few movies fail like Alien Resurrection. Like I told you at the top of the podcast, it fails from the premise, and then the fail just multiplies exponentially as the movie develops. And that's just a shame. You know, this seems to be, I don't know, maybe by the time you get to the fourth installment of a franchise, you need to maybe bring in a new crew. You know, Superman 4, Rocky 4, Alien 4, I don't know. I don't know. They're tuning up now for Matrix 4. I don't know. I'm just kind of wait and see on that one. But the thing I said originally is still what I stand by. The conclusion to the Ripley Hicks Newt era was literally none of what we wanted, but it was concluded. Mm-hmm. And they should have left it at the end of the last movie. And all of the ideas that we've been banning about during this podcast, any one of those ideas could have been a wonderful starting point for where this franchise could have gone, because some of the ideas in it really are viable, but the way it's done here is just ridiculous. And you know, you can remember Drake and Vasquez and Spunkmeyer and Farrow and Hicks and Hudson and Where's Basky and Apone. You besides Carl, you can't remember these people's names. What they names? You don't remember their names. You only remember their faces because they did have a good cast playing them, but you don't even remember the names. That's how far we've gotten in 2 movies. Okay? So just to all you writers and directors out there, you know, take some time to learn your craft. It's like Bracey said, just creature design. Just the art design, just the functionality, just the idea of creating a predator-based creature means it needs to act that way. Just so many different things that needed to line up for this film that unfortunately did not. And so, you know, so this is the end of the Ripley era, and it's a shame that it goes out like this. We do have a lot of continuation in the novels and the comics and the video game, like Alien Isolation. Some of those work better than others. Some of those don't work at all. But this is the end of it for the movies. And, you know, just what a way to say goodbye to one of the greatest screen characters we've ever seen. Ellen Ripley is one of the greatest female action heroes, sci-fi horror leads we've ever seen. And this is how it goes out. This is not even a whimper. This is a head scratch. This is a what? What we just watched? What? Like that. No. Don't like that, but it is what it is. So more films to go after this. Where they go after this is up for debate. That's what we're going to debate next time. Just, you know, everything that happens after this point is, I don't know. We'll just save it for the next podcast, but it's interesting too. Let me put it that way. So I want to thank my co-host as always, just for bringing the good discussion, bringing the great ideas, bringing, you know, what we could have done, because we become better as writers and we become more appreciative as fans every time we do one of these podcasts. Every time you peel the layers back of something and look at it critically, you become a smarter fan and you become a better writer. And that's why we do what we do. So I want to thank Nemesis. Thank you so much, Nemesis.
No problem. I love talking about this stuff with you guys. And I do have to say, thinking about, you know, summing up how I feel about this, I just say the first 2 movies was the building of intellectual property that just happened to find itself in a movie. The third movie was this stretch of too many cooks in the kitchen. But this is one of the first movies I ever watched where the whole intellectual property was only a vehicle for them to be able to create a movie and tell someone else's story. It's the first time that I remember seeing a science fiction movie that had nothing to do with its original property and was merely a vehicle to create a movie and do something else. and that's
really
really
interesting.
terrible.
I hadn't thought about it from that point, but that's true. Very true.
Was it made just to hold on to the rights?
Probably, I think so. Yeah.
Like the Underground Fantastic Four, right? Thank you so much, Bracy. You can throw in some final thoughts if you got them.
I do, and in a way, it goes back to what Nemesis just said. For those of you out there who are creating the future of the franchise or have similar ideas, when you have an original movie that's based, the thing that makes the movie is the most original and horrifying alien creature design ever seen up to that point in film, do not follow it up with something that looks like the newborn. Take your design and hold it up to the Giger design and ask yourself, is this truly a worthy successor? And if it's not, don't do it. Just don't.
Now, based on what Bracy just said, let me just throw this in. Don't fire everybody that made your first movie successful. You want to throw that out. Steve, you get the last word. Thank you so much, Steve. And final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I will say, as far as this movie, this is a movie that I honestly find unintentionally hilarious. And the only value that I have for this movie is to laugh at it, because that's the only thing that you really can do with some of this stuff. It is the kind of movie where at least you can sit there and you can riff on it. And so at least there's that small value. But and the worst of it is that these are all talented people that made this movie. Even then with the last movie was the same. They were all talented people. It's not like any of these people were like total hacks and that don't know what they're doing. And, some of them may have been inexperienced, maybe Joss Whedon, that wasn't ready to make a movie like this or write a movie like this. Maybe there was a disconnect, but there's nobody who's actually a bad performer or a bad writer or in terms of talent. It's just that the studio wanted to continue a story that had already basically been finished with the second one, and they had nowhere to go with it. They had and really they had a character who was dead. They had to find a way to bring her back, and they do it in the most stupid way possible. And then they just don't know what they're doing with any of it. So ultimately, it's a waste of potential, but with the property and with the talent, and it's all because studios want to make money rather than because they had a story that they had to tell. And so I will leave you with this, and that is, don't take the skies from me.
And on that note, dead character, stupid resurrection, money grab. We'll see you on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers.